After testing out my new Zora tunic, it's now about time to put it to the real test by making my way through the water temple. This dungeon is infamous for its difficulty and became a meme in the last couple of years, but I don't think it's that difficult. Okay, the dungeon requires you to raise and lower the water level in it a lot, but I don't really mind that. What I hate about this dungeon is the fact that you constantly have to change between the normal and iron boots. That's a pain in the ass. I wonder how it must be to have normal people problems. Not much happens at the water temple, besides me running into fish tits again. RooView is still mad at me for disappearing 7 years ago, but she still wants to marry me. Great. Oh, and look at that! Our Zelda 2 friend, Darkru, is back too. I don't know why, but beating the crap out of myself with a hammer is strangely therapeutic. To lift the curse off of the water temple, I have to duke it out with this tentacle thing called Morpha. This thing isn't too difficult to beat if you trap it in a corner, like a real hero. After defeating the slimy little ball, it's about time to awake the water temple sage. Look, it's Ruto. That was unexpected. Lake Heal is now restored to its former glory, and I can move on to my next stop, the Shadow Temple. But there is one little thing I can do first. Why don't we finally finish the game's trading sequence? I have to talk to the Zora King to get the so-called eyeball frog. I bring the frog to this guy at Lake Heal, and after he squishes the frog into eye drops, I can get my reward, the Big Goron Sword. This is the most powerful weapon in the game, and even though I can't use my shield while wielding it, I still love it. And that's not all I can do now. Turns out that I'm not stuck in my adult body. Using the Master Sword, I'm able to travel back in time. You could almost say it's like a link to the past. I don't only do this for fun, since I have to get a specific item from the well in Kakariko village to progress further. To get down there, I first have to visit my old friend at the windmill. Playing the Song of Storms in here drains the water out of the well and leads to the guy teaching the song to me 7 years later. Oh, so I was the little kid he was talking about. Now that's some Doctor Who wibbly wobbly timey wimey shit. In the well itself, I have to fight this thing and receive the Lens of Truth in return. This is a really useful item, since it allows me to see hidden items and enemies. Well, being a kid is fun and all, but I still have a world to save. So let's travel back to the future. Back at Kakariko village, I witness Shiki Baby getting his ass kicked by a shadowy monster. Coincidentally, the thing escapes into the Shadow Temple, my next stop. And let me warn you, the Shadow Temple is really spooky. I know that because the spirits in there can't shut up about it. Plus, the whole place is made up of skulls. The Lens of Truth comes into play here, and it helps me to solve the puzzles in the dungeon. Okay, I opened the door, but how am I supposed to get over there? Turns out that I need the dungeon's special item, the hover boots. So I just have to trust in them. Okay, let's give them a try. Oh, you lying sack of shit! Not much else happens in here. I get to take a calming boat ride with a bunch of skellimans, blow up some shit, and face off with the shadowy monster from earlier, Bongo Bongo. His fight is actually a little bit more difficult than the previous ones. I like it. Nevertheless, the big guy plays his last drum solo, and I wake up the fourth sage, Impa. That means there's only one dungeon left, the Spirit Temple. To get to that place, I first have to make my way through the Gerudo Fortress. You may remember that place from the previous video. Sneaking through the place, I run into these carpenter guys. They went to the fortress to join the all-female Gerudo to become thieves. Yeah, to become thieves. Of course. Who are you kidding? You came here to To save those carpenters, I have to beat up this lady a bunch of times. Rescuing the carpenters does not only lead to them repairing the bridge to Gerudo Valley, but it earns me the respect of the Gerudo, making me one of them. You see that, kids? If someone doesn't like you, just beat them up a couple of times. Now I can finally make my way through the nearby desert and get some help from a ghost to reach the Spirit Temple. There isn't much I can do there though, since all the ways are blocked. Turns out that I have to go back in time again and come back as Kid Roo. I meet the Gerudo's second in command, Naburo, and she explains to me that even though he is the Gerudo's king, she doesn't like Ganondorf very much. She also asks me to get her a treasure out of the temple in return of her doing something great for me.
Nice.
I know what you are thinking, and yes, she's talking about exactly that. I do find her treasure, the silver gauntlets, but oh noes! Naburo is kidnapped by two nasty witches. Guess I get to keep the gauntlets after all. Traveling back to the future, I can now open up the temple in my adult form and make my way through it. I do think it's really cool that you have to go through the dungeon as both versions of Link. Plus, this dungeon has some nice puzzles involving sunlight, something I haven't seen before in a game back then. The Spirit Temple also holds the Mirror Shield, an item I can use to reflect sunbeams to solve puzzles or to give the statue a sunbeam facial.
Nice.
You probably guessed it already, the dungeon's boss is the witch duo from earlier, Kotake and Koume. This is my favorite boss fight in the game, as I have to reflect their fire and frost beams back at them to hurt them. They also have a second battle phase where they fuse into a more powerful form. Now I have to absorb her attacks with my shield and throw them back at her to make her vulnerable to my big sword. Twin Rover goes down eventually and I wake the last sage, Naburo. In case you had any doubts earlier, just look at that. She says she would have kept her promise if she knew that I grew up in such a handsome adult. Okay. And this leaves us with the big fight against Ganondorf. I return to the Temple of Time to meet up with Sheik, and he tells me a more or less interesting story. It seems like Ganondorf didn't get the full power of the Triforce, as the godly power split into 3 parts. He himself got the Triforce of Power, I got the Triforce of Courage, and Sheik got the Triforce of Wisdom. And he's actually Zelda in disguise. I knew it! I would recognize that butt anywhere. The princess also gives me the powerful light arrow to defeat Ganondorf. But surprise surprise, she is suddenly kidnapped by the douchebag. Wait, if he can just do that to Zelda to get her part of the Triforce, why doesn't he kidnap me too? Anyways, the sages help me reach Ganondorf's castle by building a cute rainbow bridge, and it's about time to face Ganondouche himself. He challenges me to a game of ping pong, and it's useless to say that I beat him easily. Zelda is free again, but there is no time to rest, since Ganondorf's castle is collapsing on us. We make our daring escape, and everything seems fine. Just for Ganondorf coming back to life to transform into his true self. The King of Evil, Ganon. Oh, I was wondering when he would show up. I show the giant pig who's boss, and together with Zelda and the other sages, we manage to imprison Ganondorf in the so-called Dark Realm. Now that wasn't so difficult. Hyrule celebrates Ganondorf's demise, and Zelda sends me back in time to live out my childhood. I put the Master Sword back where it belongs, Navi fucks off for whatever reason, and little Roo and Zelda reunite to do... whatever. Guess she's going to do something great for him. And that was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. My opinion hasn't really changed after playing this game again. I do still think it's a great game, and it's most definitely one of the most important games in the series. I personally just like A Link to the Past a little bit more. I have to point out that I left out some stuff for the sake of these reviews' narrative. There is a ton of stuff to do in this game. You can collect Skulltula tokens to get a bigger wallet, for example. Or you can go on the hunt for the remaining magical arrows, the fire and ice arrow. Or why not try to find all the great fairy fountains? The ladies there reward you with some pretty useful spells. Well, with that game dealt with, what are we going to review next? What the fuck was that? Well, guess we have to find out in the next RooView. Until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to take to the comments to tell me how wrong my opinion about Ocarina of Time is. This is Roo signing off. Bye bye!